Welcome back to the FL Teams podcast, the Sunshine State Sports Rundown. And guys, we are back after Saturday. We're going to talk some UCF football, and I am so excited for this one because in Florida teams, the Florida teams have been down the last few years in terms of football. You you have Miami, who's under exceeded expectations. Florida under exceeded expectations, and Florida State. I mean, yes, they did good last season, but you lost in your bowl. You got demolished in your bowl, and then you lose to Georgia Tech this season. But UCF is a team that you, as a fan, you love to see growth. What's the best part, I think, as a college football fan, is growth, progression, and UCF proved that. You start in the American Conference, you have two undefeated seasons, and you work your way up. And yes, you didn't make the playoffs in those two undefeated seasons. Do I think they should have? 100%. I mean, they're undefeated, but we thought Florida State should have last season. But they get the opportunity to go into the Big 12, and if they do that well in the Big 12, they should make the playoffs quite easily, especially at the 12-team playoff. And they progressed every single year, have the UCF Knights. We're going to be talking with a UCF insider, someone who covers UCF with FL team. So, this UCF team going into last season, before they did make a bowl game. Yes, they lost the bowl game, but they did make it. And before that, they had two straight 9-win seasons. Then the COVID year happened. They still were two games above 500, going 6-4. Then a 10, a 12, and a 13-win season. So pretty spectacular what UCF has been able to do. And now you have Gus Malzahn entering year two. So when you look at this UCF team, and when you look at any college football teams, there's usually a person, a player, a player, a position group, someone who jumps off and jumps out of the boards, like someone that is clearly someone that is going to make an impact. And that's this UCF running game. RJ Harvey is returning for another year with the Knights going into his senior year. He had 226 carries last year. Wow, was he a workhorse? They gave it to him a whole lot. And you look at some of the games, he's been increasingly like a huge guy. He had 24 carries in the 45-3 blowout win over Oklahoma State, 20 carries in the win versus Cincinnati, 21 carries versus Houston. So when he gets 20 plus carries, the team usually succeeds. And not only do you have him, you also get a guy in the transfer portal in Penny Boone, who had 1,400 yards, 194 carries. Oh, forgot to mention, RJ Harvey had 1,416 yards, 16 touchdowns. 16 touchdowns is just amazing. In 12 games, 16 touchdowns. That's just amazing. And a 6.3 average yards. Penny Boone, 15 touchdowns, 7.2 yards a carry. And that's just spectacular. Like, I don't usually get this hyped up, this overreacted, but that's like insanely good. So, yeah, yes, this UCF running game is good. You do need, obviously, the O line, in my opinion, is more important than the running back room. And you lose a lot of guys on the offensive line, which is going to be a big, blow to the team. You do return KJ Jefferson. Gunnar Smith, the QB, transferred out, but KJ Jefferson from Arkansas was insanely good in his years at Arkansas. He's a dual threat quarterback, someone who scrambles well. He had a lot of interceptions last year and a low QBR, but he's going to throw for a lot of yards, and he's going to rush as well. We know he is. But this offensive line is definitely a concern. You do have Caden Kittler and Jabari Brooks at center and right tackle positions, respectively. And then I believe they had this guy Marshall at right guard when I was looking earlier. But other than that, the offensive line, it's not a veteran group. And I forgot to mention with the running back room. I just cannot stop rambling about how good this running back room is. But Johnny Richardson um is returning for another season. He had over 500 yards last season as a backup to someone like RJ Harvey. So are they going to run it as much this year? I don't know. KJ Jefferson's going to obviously scramble himself. You have Kishon Hudson in the receiver room. Oh, and our guest is coming on really soon. So I should stop yapping and rambling about UCF because we want to talk to a UCF insider, someone who knows this team more than ever. We're going to ask him some questions, and UCF plays in just 2 days. So let's meet our UCF guest insider. Welcome back to the Sunshine State Sports Rundown. I'm here with a writer for the FL Teams site. Make sure you guys check it out right now, flteams.com. You can find all of the written work for the FL Teams website. And Brian Fisher, here, writer for UCF, joins us. And Brian, how are you doing today? Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course, I appreciate you having me. I'm doing all right. I'm excited for the football season to kick off in 2 days, especially home opener. I'm excited. Bounce House is going to be packed. Uh, Tickets sold out. Student tickets sold out within 3 hours. So that's got to be some kind of record. But I think this year is going to be fun.
Yeah, and you mentioned that the student tickets being sold out. I think everyone is bought into UCF and going into year two of the Big 12 season. This is where Gus Malzahn, he's got all his guys. He was able to do a lot of good stuff in the transfer portal to improve the roster, get a lot of new key additions. But, Brian, UCF is one of the four teams that joined the Big 12 2 seasons ago. But while prior to that, they were in the American Conference, and them, Houston, Cincinnati, and BYU, who is in the West Coast Conference, all joined the Big 12. So for you, what would you say the biggest, what would you say the transition is like for UCF football, basketball, just UCF athletics from a smaller conference in the AAC to a Power Four conference in the Big 12?
I mean, look, it's not easy. It's never easy. The expectations get much higher. And I'm not going to sit here and say, we were the top. We weren't. We have the national championship 2017. We all like to say. It's hasn't been the easiest transition. As we saw last year, we started out great, and then just slowly just ran out of steam down the line. But I believe in Gus coaching at Auburn, playing against Bama, playing against all those guys. I feel that not only are we primed to make a big step and have a big jump this year, I think Gus is going to be one of the big reasons that we do it.
Yeah, 100%. And you talk about Gus. Obviously, he has coaching experience in the Power Four with Auburn. Someone who has been in the biggest moments. Brian, something that was key for UCF is they got a new quarterback in the transfer portal. KJ Jefferson, a dual threat quarterback, someone from Arkansas who had his ups and has his downs. Obviously, he you got to look at when you look at his flaws, he's got to limit the mistakes, the lack of turning the ball over that he's had. He's had multiple interceptions, multiple fumbles. However, with that big risk of him making mistakes, he also has a big upside, a high ceiling, so to speak. So he's coming from Arkansas. He hasn't really been able to lead Arkansas to wins. However, he's been someone who has contributed huge for the Arkansas team. He wasn't able to take Arkansas to a 8-9 win season on his own. Obviously, you need other pieces in the offense to do that. But he was clearly the star player, someone that Arkansas relied on. They trusted him in the red zone to use his legs on his own. Brian, do you see KJ Jefferson getting the green light from Gus Malzahn to lead this offense on his own, take off with his legs, and use himself to make the explosive big plays, or do you think that they're going to be more conservative and hand the ball off 20 to 25 times like last season?
I mean, look, personally, I'm not upset if we hand the ball off 20, 25 times. I know who we got back there in terms of running backs. So I'm okay with that. I do think that the playbook's going to be a little limited in the first couple of games. Um, I'm I don't want to compare, but we did see what happened with DJU over at FSU and George against George Tech. Playbook seemed very limited. DJ seemed very slow. No shade to FSU, but I think that KJ will have to earn Gus's trust slowly but surely. I think that will happen around the October November area. I think we'll really start to see why KJ was, I'd say, the third, maybe fourth best QB in the transfer portal this year.
Yeah, and you mentioned that he's going to need time to work his way into the new system, gain trust within the coaching staff. But you also mentioned that the first few weeks you wouldn't be mad if they hand the ball off 20 to 25 times. And that's actually something that is very much so going to work out if UCF was to do that of all teams. Just looking at the running back room, they arguably have the best running back room in the country, in the entire country. Obviously, you return RJ Harvey, someone who had 16 touchdowns last season, and someone that they relied on in the red zone. He rushed for over 1,400 yards. But something that is also something that they did in the transfer portal that Gus Malzahn proved why he's a great recruiter. They went out and they got Toledo transfer Penny Boone, someone who had 1,400 yards and 15 touchdowns. That's 7.2 yards a carry, which is very impressive to pick up 7 yards each carry as a running back. So you have a really good running back room. Not to mention, you also do return Johnny Richardson Jr., who backed up and was someone who, when RJ Harvey was tired of all the carries, would come into games. So this running back room is stacked. There's no question about it. You have the best running back room in the country. I'll say it is really, really solid. But you lose a lot in the offensive line. Yes, you do return guys like Caden Kittler and Jabari Brooks, but there's a lot of losses within the offensive line. One guy I'm looking at, uh, um, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I may be uh, forgetting him, but it's Marshall, the right guard. He was very good for them last year. But
Okay.
Brian, you got a really good running back room, but I would argue that the offensive line is more important than the running backs because you need people to block for them. So what would you think the offensive line? Do you think they're going to be a good offensive line? Do you think they're going to be able to hold their ground and give KJ Jefferson 5 6 seconds to throw, or RJ Harvey time to block for him? Like, do you think this offensive line is going to be good this season?
I mean, look, whenever you have guys to graduate and then you have new guys that come in on transfers, there's always that sense of, what system am I running? I go from Bama to UCF, Memphis. It's transferring from one college to another with a whole new college coach and new systems. It's always tough, especially when you have freshmen or sophomores that are sitting there waiting in the wings. But, Malzahn, as much as everyone just, it's a hit or miss on the reviews of Malzahn between his screen game and all the RPOs. He's going to find a way to hide how new our O line is with the amount of RPOs and quick passes we're going to have. I think that our dynamic playmakers, Kobe Hudson, Townsend, we got Randy Pittman, RJ Harvey, like you said, I think they're going to get the ball enough and KJ is going to be out of trouble to the point where the offensive line really won't be as big of a question mark as people think it will be this year.
100%. And Brian, you mentioned that you had to go at 7:30, and I looked up and it's already 7:28. So time definitely flies when you're talking college football. But I know we gotta do something about these time constraints. I know we got to cut it off at 7:30. So I'm going to ask you a last question here. Pretty
Sure.
much a two-part question, two questions in one. So UCF, their first game, it's just we're just 2 days away from it against New Hampshire.
Yeah.
If you're a UCF fan, are you losing sleep? Are you worried? Are you nervous about this New Hampshire game, or is it just going to be a breeze because they're an FCS school? Most likely it'd be a breeze, but you never know. Georgia Tech upset Florida State last week. Yes, would New Hampshire be? Is New Hampshire as good as Georgia Tech? No, but you never know in college football. And second question to this two-part question is UCF in year two under Gail Smalzone and year two in the Big 12, are they going to improve that 6 win total? And are they going to win 8, 9, maybe 10 games this season?
I mean, credit to New Hampshire. They put their best foot forward every year. We saw New Mexico State drop 17-point lead against, I think it was Montana or Montana State a couple days.
Montana State.
I mean, it's always tough when you play college guys. They always want it more. I'm not particularly losing sleep, but it's another game. They know what they're doing, or else they wouldn't be here. Um, in terms of your second question, if KJ understands the system, and if all of our transfers and young guys buy into what Gus is doing, I think we're a 9-10 team, second, maybe third in the Big 12. But I mean, this is going to be a fun year, whatever way you slice it. But New Hampshire definitely has some people we got to worry about in 2 days.
You heard it first from Brian. Don't worry. Don't worry, UCF fans. You shouldn't be losing sleep over week one versus New Hampshire, but definitely be prepared for, you never know what could happen. Brian, very much so appreciate you coming on. Thank you for all the insight
Absolutely.
and hope to talk to you soon. If UCF has a big game upcoming, we'll definitely have you on again. Thank you, everyone, for watching the Sunshine State Sports Rundown. That is your episode on your UCF team preview. I'm JJ Metz alongside Brian Fisher.